Good morning. Thank you for being present today here. Thank you for taking the time to join my workshop. Today, I would like to present a topic I'm very passionate about. The title of my workshop is The Sailboat Metaphor, a model of teacher-student interaction. So a few words about myself. My name is Voicu Mihnea Simandan. I come from Romania. I am a psychology teacher. I am also a positive psychology coach, a former competitive archer, and an archery coach. And I have used concepts of positive psychology both in my training and performance as a competitive archer, as well as an archery coach, and obviously in my teaching practice, and more recently in my role as a form tutor. So I would like to begin by posing this question: what is positive psychology? And how does the sailboat metaphor fit into the concepts proposed by positive psychology? So the sailboat metaphor, the topic of our workshop today, is a model of human functioning, and it is underpinned by the theory of positive psychology. The practical aim of positive psychology is to enhance autonomy and enhance resilience. And in our workshop today, we're thinking about our role as teachers, wishing to enhance students' autonomy and students' resilience. So according to Martin Seligman, the person we credit as the father of positive psychology is the scientific study of optimal human functioning that aims to discover and promote the factors that allow individuals and communities to thrive. In my opinion, the key words here are optimal, promote, and thrive. So as teachers, we wish to help students create optimal life habits. We want to promote the best in themselves, and we want them to thrive in their life at school and outside of school. So how does the sailboat metaphor fit into the concept of well-being? So at the core of well-being, in my opinion, and according to positive psychology, lies the relationship that people have with themselves. Because many people look at themselves from a very limited perspective. Students often highlight their weaknesses and the limitations, focusing on the flaws they have and the flaws that they want to correct. Well, the sailboat metaphor that I'm proposing today offers teachers and students a different perspective, offers a more holistic lens. This metaphor highlights both the factors that reduce well-being, but also put an emphasis on the factors that allow us to flourish and grow and thrive. So, who created the sailboat metaphor? It was created by a psychologist named Hugo Alberts from the Netherlands. He's also the founder of an amazing platform called positivepsychology.com. And on this platform, they also offer a certification pathway for becoming a positive psychology coach, one that I have taken and that I highly recommend. I will provide some links at the end of the workshop. So let's begin. What is the sailboat metaphor? The metaphor compares human functioning in its entirety to a sailboat and its journey, and thus it can offer a multifaceted perspective of the self. And I believe that it can be used as a model of teacher-student interaction by all parties involved in a school: the teachers, form tutors, school counselors, even school leadership in their interaction with the students. The model can help students operate in a reference framework, and that framework is the metaphor of the sailboat. So by using this framework, students can align their behavior with their values and take responsibility of their own actions. Remember, at the beginning, we mentioned the word autonomy. So we want the students to become autonomous and responsible for their own actions. The three components of the sailboat metaphor, and that's why it's a metaphor, are the sailboat, which will be the framework that I will present at first, the captain, who's the student. So the student is the one piloting his own sailboat, and the lighthouse, which is us teachers, counselors, supervisors. So it is hoped that, from our perspective, that by using this framework, students can become more autonomous, more authentic, and more resilient. And these are all concepts that positive psychology promotes. Now, why this metaphor? Why is it important to have a metaphor when students refer to their own life experiences? Well, there are three reasons why I believe this is a beneficial metaphor in teacher-student interaction, as well as it's beneficial for the students. And the benefits come threefold. First one, it can add structure to the way students view life. And life is quite complex, so it adds structure to the complexity of life. Second reason is that it creates a balanced approach to human functioning. So we want students to focus on strengths, but we don't want them to ignore their weaknesses. And I believe that by learning how to use strengths and address weaknesses in a healthy manner, students can become more autonomous, more resilient, and can take control of their own life and actions. And thirdly, I think it's an intuitive framework that students can relate to. So today I would like you to have this scenario in mind. Imagine that you are trying to help a student with their internet addiction. And by that, let's think of excessively playing video games, compulsive online shopping, or constantly checking social media. So when we will break out into small groups in rooms today, we will have two breakout sessions. This will be the scenario that I would like you to engage with. So with that at the back of your mind, let's look at the sailboat metaphor. So the metaphor, as I said, it compares human functioning to a sailboat and its journey. And it addresses 8 elements, which you can see here in the slide. And each element is associated to a part of the sailboat. And we will look together at all these elements. The elements, as you see, cover the whole spectrum of human functioning, from life domains to emotions, values, weaknesses, strengths, events, social relationships, and goals. And by looking at ourselves, I believe through the lens of the sailboat metaphor, both us and the students can broaden their view of their lives. It's not all about their weaknesses. It's not all about their strengths. It's also about the relationships they build with their community. So I think this framework can shift attention from what is wrong with us. Oh, I'm not good at this. Oh, I did poorly in a math test, to the resources that we can find in our environment, but also within ourselves. So let's begin with the first element of the sailboat metaphor, the water, which corresponds to life domains. And life domains are the different areas in our daily life, in our environment, such as school, our job, relationships, friends, home life. If we think of ourselves, our financial situation, our personal relationship, our marriage. In the sailboat metaphor, just think about it. No boat can move in isolation from the water it finds itself in. So we can think of water as the playground of life. And I really like this term, as the water being the playground of life. And just as we as people interact with the environment, the boat has to interact with the water around itself. So the boat moves through the water, just as we move through this playground of life, just as we move through life. And there are different segments of our life. There are different segments of water which the sailboat moves through. So for example, if the boat changes its course by steering to a different segment of the water, we could compare that to switching from one life domain to another. And in practical terms, we can say students leave home, then they come to school, then they return home, then they interact with their family, then they go out and interact with their friends. So the life domains are the playground of life, and they represent water in this metaphor. Now, a core question when we address this element is, what are the most important domains in your life? And these questions throughout the presentation can be used to guide the interaction between teacher and the student. And these questions can be points of investigations, like rather than asking a student, so tell me, what's wrong in your life? You can ask, let's discuss about the domains in your life. What's happening around your sailboat? And today in rooms, these will be the questions that will be the focus of our peer discussion. So why are life domains important? They provide us with a wide range of options to find resources. For instance, friendship can be a very good source of support and inspiration in difficult times. And now we're going through some very difficult times. Or spending time with your own hobbies can be, let's say, a powerful way to restore some sort of balance when we overinvest in a certain life domain. Let's say students approach end of year exams and all their focus is on their exams. So there can be a burnout, but they can find a balance by looking at their other life domains. Unfortunately, it is also very common for people to be overly focused on the life domain which they are least satisfied with, because they want to fix something in their life. So in that way, they take all their time from other meaningful life domains, such as family, friends, other social relationships. And this can lead to forming a self-identity that is predominant around one domain only. So for example, if a student says, I am good at math, or the opposite, I am not good at math, the students can develop a fixed mindset and a self-identity, as in like, I'm the math guy or I'm the guy that does not do math. So I believe that by expanding students' awareness of all the life domains in their playground of life, we can help them restore a balance so that they can widen their scope and they can also form healthy self-definitions. So it's not all about one subject or one performance in one particular test. There is more to a student than just that. The second element of the sailboat metaphor is the compass. And the compass represents our emotions. And they serve as a tool to navigate and to orienteer. And as you can imagine, emotions are complex and they involve many physical and mental processes, which most of the time happen simultaneously. So both positive and negative emotions are signals, and they require us to give attention to. So in the sailboat metaphor, emotions are represented by the compass, and they provide feedback to our current state and the current state of the boat. So we could ask the question, what kinds of emotions do you experience? And why is it important to look at emotions? Because they give us information about ourselves and about the interaction we have with our environment. Because we cannot ignore negative emotions, they require our attention, but they also narrow our attention, and because we need to be focused on a threat or on a danger, on a high stakes exam that is about to happen. But we can also look at the positive emotions that we experience, such as joy, relaxation, and these emotions can signal well-being and inform us that, you are on the right track. And I also believe that positive emotions can open you up, and you can become more creative. You notice more things in your immediate environment. The third element is the steering wheel, and the steering wheel represents values. So values can help students find what's important, can help us too, right? What's important in our lives. For example, we have creativity or honesty, on friendship or friendship. And then when we live according to our values, we can find true meaning and purpose in our life. And if students live according to their values inside and outside the school, they can enjoy coming to school. In the Sailboat Metaphor, values are seen as directions, not destinations, because values are like ongoing processes, and in a way, they can never be accomplished. Just think about creativity. Can you accomplish or conquer creativity? It's an ongoing process. So in the Sailboat Metaphor, it's the steering wheel who represents our values, and it determines the direction the boat can go. And this direction is reflected by the values that we hold and uphold. So a question, very simple question, but difficult to answer. I tried it many times with my students. What are your values? And because values can remind ourselves and the students of the person they want to be. They can help students make choices. They can give them meaning, purpose in life. And if we want to set goals with students, I think values are a very good starting point for goal setting. And then if the goals reflect our values, I believe students will be more likely to increase their commitment in, following up and keeping their goals. Now, let's look at leaks. Positive psychology does not ignore weaknesses. And in the Sailboat Metaphor, weaknesses represent the leaks. And a weakness, it can be, and probably it is, a personal characteristic that reduces well-being. And this weakness can interfere with our goals, with our values, and it maybe can stop us from bouncing back from a difficult period of time. So some examples of weaknesses could be fatigue, worrying too much, or always trying to please others. Now, in the Sailboat Metaphor, you have the leaks, and they represent the boat's vulnerability, the same way it represents a student or a person's vulnerability. You did not sleep well enough, of course, you're not going to perform well in your test, let's say. So if we don't take care of the weaknesses, most likely the well-being will decline. And if the captain doesn't take care of the boat will sink. I think it's a very good way to address weaknesses with students by simply asking them, let's look at this issue or else your boat will sink. I think it's a non-threatening way to address a weakness. So a core question would be, what weaknesses reduce your well-being? And it is important because we need to take care of our well-being. And when neglected, it can result in illnesses. And actually in my classroom, we have a whole set of books on anorexia nervosa. We have books on depression. And outside of school, let's say, it can lead to, outside of school control, it can lead to reckless behavior, driving or gambling or spending the night out with the wrong crowd. So I think the weaknesses are influenced by the intensity and the duration of this weakness. And it's important to mention that they will not last forever, but they need to be addressed. So it could be shorter periods of time. Let's say I spend all weekend playing computer games, or they can be more acute and last for weeks, months, even years, if we think of some more serious addictions. Now, let's move on to strengths. And the strengths are beautifully represented in the Sailboat Metaphor by the sails of the boat. And the same way we can ask students, what are your weaknesses? I think we can also ask them, maybe firstly, what are your personal strengths? And strengths are and should be things that we're naturally good at. For instance, because we mentioned creativity, maybe you're naturally creative. And when we use this creativity, when we use our strengths, we can feel more energized and engaged in the activity. And this can allow us to flourish. In the Sailboat Metaphor, the strengths are the sails of the boat. And just imagine, take the sails away, take the strengths away, the boat will just aimlessly drift in the water going nowhere. So they can allow the sail to move forward, say in the same way student strength can help them move to the next step in their life. They can generate momentum, and in the sailboat metaphor, it can help the captain create a journey they want to travel on. I like to say a journey worth traveling. A core question would be, what are your personal strengths? And why is it important? Because we use our strengths. Research has shown that it increases our levels of well-being. We feel energized. And in the context of work, let's think about ourselves. If as teachers we use our strengths and we teach the subject that we are passionate about, it gives higher levels of work engagement. We're more productive. We have a higher job satisfaction. Now apply that to students, how we can use their strengths in our own subjects, and then they will literally enjoy our class more. Now, the sixth element is the weather. These are the events in our life, and they can be positive or negative events, and they are inevitable. You can't choose a life full of positive events and one that avoids all negative events. And we need to accept the fact that these events can vary in duration, and they can vary in intensity and the level of control. Just think about it. What is our level of control in the situation when we are put in lockdown? We have no level of control. So in the sailboat metaphor, life events are the weather. Who can control the weather? It's external, it's constantly changing, and these are the events in our lives. Some events are challenging, the same way the captain might go through a challenging patch in their journey. Sometimes you face storms, sometimes heavy rain, but then the sun comes out and shines again. So both positive and negative events can be acknowledged, but we also need to emphasize that positive life events are easier to cope with, and they contribute positive feelings. And then we need to acknowledge that negative life events can create coping problems. Now, a good question would be, what events happened, are happening, or may happen in your life? Both positive and negative, both daily events or events that you know will happen in the future. I believe that both positive and negative events can allow students to become more resilient, because the negative events can offer the students an opportunity to learn how to deal with a difficult time in their lives, such as you have an IB exam, you have 3 exams tomorrow, you have a day to prepare for. But then when we overcome these difficult events, we can strengthen our beliefs that we are able to take on life's challenges. And at the same time, positive events can create a buffer zone against the stress that is caused by negative events and by the fact that they are out of our control. The seventh, and maybe one of the very important elements of the sailboat metaphor, are the other boats. It is important to look at human functioning not only from a self and individualistic point of view, but also at the other members of your group, at your social relationships. And again, we can make a distinction between positive and negative social relationships. Positive social relationships can create more satisfaction and well-being in life. Negative relationship can cause conflict, can be driven by lack of support, and can lead to negative emotions. So in the sailboat metaphor, social relationships are the captains and the other boats. And just think about it, during a captain's journey, the captain will pass by other boats. And with some, they might have a good time together. Other might crash into your own boat, or might give you a troublesome journey. And it is important to acknowledge and to identify which parts of our social relationships lead to positive or negative events. And we have a bunch of core questions that look at the social network of the student, at the positive and negative relationships, and how they contribute or not to the student's well-being. Because if we can identify negative relationships that reduce students' well-being, then that could be addressed. Why is it important? It is very important because we are not an island and we need to interact with others. And this interaction can enhance or not our well-being. At the same time, the need to interact with others is an innate need that we have to relate. We need to relate to others. We want to belong to a social group. And these connections can be both a source of distress or misery, but they can also have a positive effect. And these need to be identified and recognized. And the last element of our sailboat metaphor are the destinations. The destination is the goal of the student, of the goal of the person who looks at their life as a journey, as a captain of a boat. Actually, a goal is literally just a mental image of a scenario in the future that you aim to achieve. Obviously, not all goals are the same. Some can be reached easily, quickly, others take years to complete. Just think about it. IB diploma ends in 2 years. The goal is to graduate with an IB diploma, but first you must finish your assignment. But I believe some goals will move you towards your desired outcome and destinations, but others will move you away from your desired outcome. But at the same time, some goals can move you away from an undesired outcome. So that's why goals have to be clearly defined. They should not be vague, and we should know exactly what is needed to achieve them. And in the sailboat metaphor, that is the captain's destination. The captain needs to know where he's heading, or else he'll just end up getting lost on the sea. Again, goals are a very important aspect in our communication with the students. I believe goals should be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, should be time connected, time bound. And these are excellent questions that we can start with our students. Now, why is it important? Because goals are achieved and can help us have a good journey in life by helping us focusing. They are goal-oriented, and we need to move towards a goal-oriented activity. They can also energize students, and they can also increase their learning journey. Because once we start pursuing a goal, we gain new insights, we gather new information, we apply the new information, we learn new strategies, and then thus we advance in our journey in life. So now I would like us to break into rooms and think about how you would use the sailboat metaphor to help a student cope with internet addiction. So let's move on to the student, the captain. So the elements of the sailboat metaphor represent key aspects of human functioning, but it is important to understand that these aspects influence the well-being of the individual, but do not define the individual. So the best way to define the individual in the sailboat metaphor is by comparing them, the student, to the captain of the boat. So why is that? Rather than being a leak in the boat, the individual is the captain of the boat who can address this leak and do something about it. So once again, self-identification. You do not identify, the student does not identify himself with or herself with an issue, but rather as the person who has the autonomy to address the issue. So another question would be, is the individual defined by their destination? Well, in our sailboat metaphor, no, because they are the captains who can choose to embark on a journey and move towards a destination. So the individual is not the direction of the boat, is not the leak of the boat, but the individual is the person who is in control of the steering wheel. In the sailboat metaphor, the quality of life depends on the relationship that the captain has with the 8 aspects of the sailboat metaphor. So the interaction between the captain and the sailboat is very important. And this interaction is determined by 4 elements: attention, thoughts, motivation, and action. Let's briefly look at these ideas. So attention is concentration of awareness on something to the exclusion of something else. In psychology, we call attention as distribution of resources, and it's a matter of focus. So in the sailboat metaphor, attention has 2 central components: amount of attention and quality of attention. Amount simply means how much we pay attention to something. For example, if we devote a lot of attention to our strengths, then the captain will focus a lot on the sails of the boat. But at the same time, if the captain ignores the leak in a boat, well, the boat might sink. So attention is required to all elements of the sailboat. Now, the quality of attention refers to the way we pay attention to something, or how are we attending to it. Because sometimes we can just split our attention between many different elements and be distracted by other things, or we can be very focused. The thoughts of the captain are also very important, and thoughts are just mental constructs. And I like to say that thoughts are mind-made stories, stories we tell ourselves, but these stories will guide our behavior, both consciously and unconsciously. And we have 3 types of thoughts: beliefs, evaluations, and explanations. A belief is a thought that we're sure of. So, for example, I have what it takes to reach my goal. Or another belief would be asking other people for help is a sign of weakness. I shouldn't. And unfortunately, beliefs are difficult to change. That's why we need to challenge them if they lead to unhealthy behavior or they reduce our well-being. Evaluations are how we judge our thoughts. And when we evaluate, we think about the status, the value, the significance of something. So for example, you've done your math test and you can say, I'm very satisfied with my performance, or I could have done better. And explanations are thoughts about why and how things went the way they went. And these explanations may concern ourselves or others, or life in general. So I think you will all connect with this. I didn't do well in the math test because, and now I think you can fill in the blanks with explanations that you've heard from your students in your own subject. So these are explanations, the thoughts of the captain. Motivation, captain's motivation, involves why, the why of our choices. Why do I wish to reach this goal? And there are 2 key ingredients to motivation, not 3 as it says over there. 2, autonomy and needs. And we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that autonomy, making students autonomous young adults, is one of the main purposes of positive psychology. Higher levels of autonomy could be summarized as want to. I want to do this because it is my wish. While lower levels of autonomy, I have to do this. In general, higher levels of autonomy have a more positive impact, both on well-being and performance. Now, when it comes to needs, needs are something that is necessary. They're necessary for us to be happy, to be healthy, and such needs include rest, safety, autonomy, friendship, a roof over our house, over our heads. And needs are also an important source of motivation. So you see how all these elements of the captain of the sailboat are interconnected. So for example, we have a need to belong, and this need to belong makes us get in touch with others. So in our case, with the captains of other boats. And by becoming aware of our needs, do you know what you want? Do you have a goal? Do you have a destination? Then we can understand why we choose to take the path that we are on. Fourth and last element would be the captain and the captain's actions. So actions refers to concrete behavior. It's what we do. For our well-being to increase, it's not enough to become aware of what you want, of what things that need to be done, but you also need to take action. And action comes in three forms: past, current, and future. And past actions, although we can't influence them, they can give insight into helpful or unhelpful patterns in our lives. Current actions, you can reflect on what is required to move forward or to grow. So we need to ask ourselves, are our current actions supporting the life that I want to lead? And self-reflection can help us find the inconsistencies between our ideas and our actions. So if I want to have better grades in math, but I play games all day at home, then maybe my current actions do not reflect my goal, and then students could take positive action. Future actions refer to planning, and future actions can help the students spell out vague intentions. Oh, I want to be famous. Well, how are you going to be famous? Or more immediate, rather than saying, I want better grades in math, the student could say, I'm going to go home, revise for the math test this Saturday morning. So this increases both clarity and also the chance of the student for taking this action. Now we can see that the captain and the sailboat metaphor can be combined, and these can give students a reference framework that they can use to understand themselves, but it also gives us a framework to work with the students. And in this diagram over here, we see how it can become an integrated model of human functioning, and how in the center we have the captain, and how the captain can have all the four elements, pay attention to any of the 8 elements of the sailboat. So by choosing a specific part of the sailboat metaphor, the students and us, the teachers, can investigate its impact and what the relationship is with the captain, which is student. Now, let's try again the rooms. And now let's think of the captain's metaphor and how we can help students cope with internet addiction by addressing their actions, their motivations, their thoughts, their attention. So a few closing remarks. What are the advantages of using the sailboat metaphor for students? I believe that it offers a safe way for them to describe their experiences. It is a more holistic view of the students rather than focusing on weaknesses. And it also gives the students an overall, a meta perspective of themselves. And I would like to share with you some quotes from students who said, I don't feel like my boat is moving. It's floating in one place, bobbing on the waves. So from here, you can understand that maybe the student needs to address the sails. Maybe the sails are not in the wind. Or I feel like I'm sailing in a direction that other sailors want me to sail. So lack of autonomy, lack of meaning. Or I'm afraid that my boat will not withstand the stormy weather that is coming. So they know there's an exam coming. How do we address that? Well, let's fix the leaks. Are there any leaks? Let's make sure our sails work properly. So I believe we could use this metaphor to start a conversation with the students. And rather than saying, tell me, what are your problems? Instantly, we have a focus on the problems. Or what is your relationship with your friends? Again, you're pinpointing an issue. We could say, describe the status of your boat, and then the student has the option to address any of the aspects of the boat, And then from there, you can dig deeper with some of the questions that I've shared with you. And our role as teachers, we are the lighthouse. We operate in the service of the boat. We clarify the students' position, and we clarify the environment they are part of. Our role as teachers is to create healthy, helping relationships with the students and help them with their basic psychological needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, to become more autonomous, more competent, and to relate to others in a healthy way. So I would like to end finally with a colored picture. This is us, the lighthouse, shining light on this sailboat. Critical note, this is just a model. It's not real life. It is a reduction of a very complex topic that is our life. And obviously there are other ways to address issues, and there are other concepts that are being used in counseling and in therapy, but the sailboat metaphor can be an intuitive way for students to talk about their life without giving the impression that they need therapy. I would like to draw attention to a few resources, and I would like to thank you for your time and for your participation.